a few working from home. This one dispatcher, she has a high risk husband, so we left her stay home too, but she is working.
Well, and that's the thing is, I mean, there's always been mixed feelings about, I think, working from home, both from employer standpoint and employee standpoint. And but we're all going to learn how to do it now, right? And if you could do your function there, then that's great. Of course, it's really tough to build buildings from home, but all the management things we certainly can do. And then even things like controlling the environment and on new construction certainly, and more prefab and things like that, and because that's still less contact. But service, that's tough. So I'm going to ask some questions about service as we go too, because I think there's a lot of considerations. So yeah.
We are trying to take advantage of some of the empty buildings, getting projects done that would have been nights or weekends. Hey, we'll come in, we'll clean up after ourselves, just get this done while it's unoccupied, and that's some people have taken to that.
Yeah, and there's a fair amount of that sentiment going on. Of course, there's some questions that go along with that, right? And so, yeah, that's some of what we'll talk about here. But anyway, I'm glad you joined. So thank you for doing that. So I'm glad you got your video on too, because it's always a lot more fun when you're when you're doing this kind of thing and you actually can see people. And so I'm going to ask everybody to do that at some point. So
just don't pull a Jennifer. The viral video of Jennifer on a Zoom conference call walking into the bathroom and doing her thing.
Being recorded.
Okay. So we suddenly have. So.
Everybody
How about now? That sounds better. Yes.
That's better.
Yeah, that's a lot better. Good. The last person I want to see is me. There we go. Let me.
Chad with Hal, can I be heard?
Yes, you can. How you doing, Chad?
Good. Sorry, I don't have a camera. It's on the laptop.
Well, that's fine. No worries at all. Good to see you.
How you doing? Nick with Royal.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Yourself?
I'm good.
Good.
So, we're back to our echo here. And that should solve that problem. So
You have been removed from the meeting. This call will now be disconnected.
don't do that.
Bye.
Okay. All right. So can you, John, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. Perfect. All right, so John, I've got 2 o'clock. So why don't we go ahead and go? First of all, welcome to everybody that's out there, and I appreciate you. We appreciate you coming in. And so I'm Kirk Alter, and I think everybody on this call knows me. And then also on this is John Zink, and so John and the PHCC Educational Foundation are jointly co-branding this this experience today. And so I want to give John a second to say hi and to make a couple of comments, and then we're going to rock and roll.
So again, thank you everybody for joining us today, and welcome to this session. Kirk's going to be leading a discussion today, and that's really what we're talking about, not a presentation. So remember, Kirk wants your interaction. We want you talking with each other. If you can, please, though, mute yourself until you're ready to talk, and that helps us with feedback and echo issues on a large group like this. I'm going to try to keep an eye on the chat box. You can send a chat question or message to the whole group or just to Kirk or I by clicking on the little round icon at the bottom of your screen. If you wiggle your mouse, you should see it. And then you can just choose from that drop-down box if you want to send a message to everybody or just to him or I. This is a new format for most folks, but it's what the new normal is. So we're all learning, and we're all going to make it work. And it should be these are the tools that we'll be using much more in the coming months. Remember that we are planning to record this session and share it later. So please talk, please share, but just don't share any information that you would not want to be public knowledge. And again, thank you for participating in this. And thanks really, really to Kirk for having this idea of doing this and putting on this presentation for all of us. And a shameless plug, if you find this useful today, make your donation to the foundation. Lots of people aren't going to be thinking of making donations these days. And so if you are thinking of it, I'm going to put something in the chat later where you can do that contribution to your cell phone. Don't send us any checks. Do it online. It's the world easier. And if you need anything, send a chat message to me, and I'll turn it back over to Kirk. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Well, the reason that we're doing this today is, I think, for the critical reasons of all of us as people, really globally, are at a time that none of us have ever experienced before. And so hence the title, Surviving and Thriving in Times of Crises. Everybody on this call, everyone in this class knows me and knows kind of how I operate, and I'm always about ready next. And so whatever we're facing, let's figure out how to win. And there's really 2 steps in this. One is how to survive right now from a business standpoint and a personal standpoint, and then 2, how to thrive. And so that's Tyler, I can hear you, man. Mute your microphone. So let me tell you how we're going to get about this. And then as John said, I encourage all of you. Again, if you don't have your microphone muted, go ahead and mute it, please. Hang on one second. Dave, mute you, buddy.
Yeah, but if we were trained, if we were authorized dealers.
There we go. All right. So obviously, I want everyone to talk, and so please, it's meant to be a conversation and not just a lecture. And so I encourage you to talk. And so the easy way to do that is when it's time to talk, just unmute yourself, and then when you're done talking, go ahead and mute, and then of course hit the chat room as well. So what we're going to talk about today is how to move forward from all of this. And so a couple of points is all of you managed to find your way into this, and so that's the information on WebEx. But I've also created a Dropbox just for participants of this group, and then also I've created an email just for participants of this group. And so after this discussion is over today, I'm going to put the recording of this and the slides that go along with it into Dropbox. and all of you will be invited to that. And so that's one thing. The second thing, if you want to share more information, then you can send things to me at that Gmail account you see on the screen. And always, everybody knows that texting me is the best way to get me. So with that, now you've got some ways to do that. So Larry is requesting to annotate the share comment. That's yeah, that's fine. Please do. All right. So now I got to get back out of annotation here.
Yeah. Look, your camera is.
All right, so let me pull that back up again. So, all right. So the most important thing is the first question I have for everybody on here is how are y'all doing? So, and since this is a dialogue and not a lecture, I want a couple of you to respond how you're doing, both personally and professionally.
Yeah, I can go. This is Philip.
Hi, Philip. How you doing?
Good. Professionally, as we discussed in our class, I work for a global EPC contractor that's mainly in the industrial sector. So most of our activities are on hold. I'm involved in a program in South Africa, and that client essentially has put a hold on a lot of their projects. So right now we're looking at resource planning, trying to determine what we need and what we don't need, quite candidly, on professionally. Personally, it's quite a bit of a situation. I'm currently in Houston, Texas right now, and the market's very, as most folks know, is very energy dependent, oil and gas dependent. So you can see a little bit of the tensions on that personally around here. On the positive side, I see more people out in the streets walking sometimes, so which was interesting during the daytime. But that's pretty much it.
Well, I appreciate that, Philip. I was talking to you're international. So I was talking to someone who's doing work in the United Arab Emirates right now, and he was talking to me just the other night about how they and their clients. Go ahead and mute, please, whoever isn't muted. They and their clients are currently renegotiating all contracts right now. And so what they've done is they've canceled all contracts and they're renegotiating the contracts, incorporating now the contingencies and the risk required by COVID-19. And so I'll talk more about that as we go. And so for everyone on the call, again, everybody knows me, but the other thing that you need to remember about me is I'm not any smarter or any better than on anybody else on this call. One of the things I do have the luxury of doing is I literally in the last 2 weeks have talked to more than 100 contractors. And so I have a pretty good feeling, my finger on the pulse of what people are doing. I think that's one of the benefits of coming into this discussion today and then the subsequent sessions as well. So I hope you all are doing as well as you can, and of course that continues. So the purpose of today's introductory session is no business person alive today has experienced what we're experiencing now because of the COVID-19 crisis. We have lots of important decisions to make and to act upon immediately. Failure to do so will have dire consequences for you, for your business, for your employees, and for your families and your communities. So first, we have to survive the immediate crisis. Second, we have to figure out how to thrive and what will be our new reality. Clearly, it's going to be impossible to address everything that needs to be taken care of and all the actions we can take in a 90-minute session. And so that's not the purpose today. The purpose today is to introduce and surface the topics and the ideas, and that give some immediate tools of things that you should be doing, but then moving towards what does our new future look like. And so the intent is to introduce those key things and have a non-political discussion about them. Since I'm the one throwing the party, I'm also going to set the rules to some degree in that we're not going to have any political discussions about this. We're going to have business discussions and economic discussions about this. Then we will be beginning a series of weekly in-depth virtual seminars where we're going to dig deeper and provide serious, actionable items for both you and your businesses. All of us are going to be learning in real time here as these crises, and I use the plural intentionally, as these crises unfold. And so let's join together and work our way out of the crises and into a thriving new world. So just a quick note on what happens after today at 3:30 relative to this discussion is send me an email after this is all over. Send me an email or text me. And in order to dig deeper, I intend future sessions to be longer so that we can really dig into some real work. I appreciate everybody that has joined today at 2 p.m. Eastern. I don't know for y'all if that is going to work well because I think you're going to be so busy in the day-to-day during the normal workday that may not work. One of the things that I do a lot of is I already teach online classes to working professionals, either people in the graduate program in construction management who are all working professionals, or to on-campus students. They're on campus, but we're teaching everything virtually now. And so those classes typically are a semester type class, which is a 3-hour class. And so I'm thinking about doing subsequent classes. One, definitely longer and more in depth, and two, thinking about doing them either Wednesday or Thursday evenings, and from 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern, which should be 4 to 7 West Coast, so that everybody can participate that wants to. And so what I'd ask you to do is, after this is over today, if you're interested in joining, let me know what your preference is. If your preference is for daytime hours, also let me know that too. And then clearly let me know if you're going to be participating, or anyone else in your company is going to be participating. I always also encourage you to invite anybody and everyone else that you want to. John made his pitch for the foundation, and that's good. But as of right now, the way I'm approaching this is all of us getting together in the industry as human beings and as business people to figure our way out of this. And so I saw somebody had their hand up, so I'll pause for a second and let whoever that was ask their question. So somebody had a hand. Go ahead. Well, they dropped their hand apparently. So, all right. So the things that are in the red. First of all, I trust you can all see the PowerPoint that's on the screen. So can somebody give me a heads up on that if they are? They can see it.
Yes, I can see it.
Yes, sir.
I can see it.
Perfect. Thank you. So the bottom two bullets that I have in red are important for this after today. So this class will be for people who are serious about participating in the class, and that's not a personal value statement. It's about how you approach what John and I are doing. So we've all been on typical work webinars, and we all know how that goes. And what happens a lot of times with work webinars is you can lurk, and all of us have lurked. And so if you aren't familiar with what lurking is you have it on playing in the background while you're multitasking. That's not what I'm interested in. That's not what we're going to be doing. And so I really am encouraging that if after today, if your intent is to lurk, that doesn't really help us all a lot. So I encourage you, if you're going to participate. And so even over the last 2 weeks, I continue to collect information from so many sources that people share, and then I share out things that we're doing as well. And so I really want active participants. And again, to remind everybody, this is not a political conversation. It's a business and a science and economics and ethics conversation, just not political. And so we are not going to be arguing politics. Okay, so that's the the format of where we're going. And so as a minimum in subsequent sessions, here's what we're going to be doing. So first we have to do the survive piece, and we'll talk about some of these today, but we won't go into depth about the how-tos today. But these are things that you have to be doing right now to address the immediate crisis. And if you're not doing them already, then you are definitely behind. So, and you need to get going. So first, a whole series of questions and actions about what to do with your employees. And so, you know, what should you be doing right now with your employees? What should you be doing in the subsequent future with your employees? What does today look like? And it's just like when we do disaster management. So, for example, the tsunami in Sri Lanka that happened. The first thing that happens is you have to do immediate disaster reaction. So, you know, saving people's lives, bringing water back online, getting temporary shelter, removing bodies, those kinds of things. That's the phase that we're in right now in our industry relative to this. And so those are the things we have to do. But then the subsequent stages of disaster relief is, okay, what does long-term recovery look like? And so we'll talk more about the 4 steps in any kind of disaster recovery from the perspective of your employees. The next thing you have to be addressing overtly and actionably is what should we be doing with our customers right now? And there's a lot we should be doing with the customers. And a lot more than just staying in touch and contacting them and those kinds of things. And I've got some examples here of some problems and issues that you should expect to be seen. The third one is, and again, if you're not talking, mute, because I can hear somebody shuffling your papers there. The third one is what to do with your creditors, your banks, your bonding companies, other insurers, and your suppliers. And so what strategies are going to be the best strategies to use in dealing with each of those entities? And there's a lot of work, a lot of this kind of work that needs to be happening right now that probably is in the background for many of you and not the foreground. Next, and critically important, is what to do immediately in evaluating your cash flow. The next one is what to do immediately to evaluate your revenue. And of course, everyone on this call knows that revenue and cash flow are completely different things. And so cash flow is what businesses will die from the quickest. Revenue, of course, is the work that you're installing, but that doesn't guarantee that you're getting paid for it, right? So I have specific directions on things that you should be doing and things that other people are doing relative to those things. And then finally on this slide, what to do immediately to recalibrate your overhead. So in general, the first phase of the next few weeks here is, in general, how do you secure your immediate future? So that's phase 1 of this program. Then the second phase is phase 2, is what to do very, very soon, parentheses, okay, now too. And if you don't do it very, very soon, you're going to be too late. The first one there is to reevaluate your strategy immediately. You need a formal strategy based on your understanding on how you need to pivot. And so I'm not big on industry buzzwords and business buzzwords and those kind of things. And so I really hesitated to put the word pivot in there. I even hesitated a little bit on strategy, but strategy is a real thing, and our businesses need strategy. Our construction industry typically has done a pretty bad job on strategy in general, and we've got an even worse job. The one comment I'll make for sure is if anybody on this call thinks that, well, what we need to do, here's our strategy. We're going to hunker down for as long as they make us hunker down. And then we're going to come out of it, and it's going to be we're going to go back to business as normal. And in fact, there'll be pent up demand because projects are behind. You are fooling yourself, and so I don't want you to fool yourself. We need to talk about what retooling your strategy looks like. With that in mind, we're going to talk about how to reimagine your business as a startup. And so, what would that look like? What would minimal staffing be? Which market sectors will you have to work in, and which market sectors will have work? How do you reconfigure your firm to do this? Then next, how to address your supply chain on both existing jobs and on booked work not started. And so we already are experiencing supply chain issues, and they're only going to get worse as the whole planet comes out of this this health crisis and then moves on to the economic crisis. And so already supply chains are being impacted. And so one of the things we'll talk about is how do you balance your supply chain requirements while protecting your productivity and your promises to your clients. And so we have a spectrum there from lean manufacturing and lean construction with just-in-time deliveries of supplies to the other end of it, which is the hoarding. And so perhaps should we order all of the materials that we need as quickly as possible for jobs that we have both ongoing and in backlog, remembering, of course, that all of that depends on your approach to cash flow. Or can we find what I call the Goldilocks strategy, which is just right relative to supply chain? And so we have to get our heads around that. We have to have those conversations. And then finally, during this phase, is we'll take a deep dive and looking at how to completely reevaluate your contracts and your relationships with your customers. So in summary, that whole second session of this is going to be about how to get going again after the immediate crisis has passed. And so that's phase 2. And then this really is phase 3. It should be a 3 on the bullet there. How to set the stage for you to thrive in the new economy. Because as I said, I'm the ultimate optimist. I believe that in difficult economic times, good profits can be made. And so what's that going to look like? And so we'll talk about marketing and selling in a new world. Nothing will be the same. Nothing about how you market or sell or go into contract are going to be the same. I had a conversation yesterday with someone who just had sold a large job, and their question to me was, should we sign the contract because of all of this uncertainty? Because of course, once you sign the contract, you now have made a series of legal and ethical commitments to do things. And so what we talked through is something that I typically have avoided, which is having multiple contracts for the same job. And so multiple contracts by phases of the job instead of one contract. Now, typically I've avoided that. I've chosen to avoid that because I don't want to have to renegotiate the contract with each phase. I also don't want to have the risk of perhaps being replaced by somebody coming in and cheapening it up so much that it gets the owner's attention. But as it turns out, maybe that is one of the pieces of retooling we need to do. So I've got my contract for the pre-construction services. I have a different contract for the underground, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll talk about all of those kinds of ideas. We'll also talk about retooling your workforce, the people that you've already laid off, the people that you may be needing to lay off in the near future. We talked a little bit at the very beginning about working from home and the virtual workforce and what does that look like. And in the long run, might that solve some of our manpower issues that we have in the industry? And so we'll talk about that as we move forward. And then rethinking about your policies, procedures, hiring, practice, et cetera. And then finally, completely rethinking your approach to finance. And then I say much more about how to thrive in the new economy. So that's where we're going subsequent to today when we make our deep dive. So the next question I have for y'all is what information are you gathering and how are you educating yourself on a daily, hourly standpoint about what's going on? So how are you staying current and educated as business leaders?
Kirk, from my side, we're looking at the supply chain. We're breaking it down by each of the various categories that we have in our line of business and seeing what the current lead time, shop capacities, and whether they're having any issues on those suppliers ordering raw materials. From the client side, we're having frequent, almost 3 times a day discussions on their projects and their spending. and as well as making sure on the client's end that we don't essentially, right now I'm in the stages of setting up a project, so making sure that things that we normally would have the client pay for, we're kind of holding it back now to see exactly where their spend is before we start saying you need to implement this system on the program and things of that nature.
And I like the frequency that you're talking about too, as well. So a much higher level of intensity of customer contact with almost everything that you're doing. And so when we think about the management effort required to do that, I think that that's a significant change for us. So the again, anybody can jump in, but so the on the screen right now is a slide about I think examples of places where you should be getting your information. And so of course, for the first one I think we should be using is the Center for Disease Control, so CDC. And so I would pay less attention to whatever news sources that you're used to paying attention to, with whichever end of the spectrum you're on, and a lot more attention to the official sources for information. And so the Center for Disease Control is your best source for what's happening with COVID-19. When we talk about later on today, we'll talk about unemployment insurance and the new stimulus package that just got passed, and where that information is coming from. But it's really important for everybody on this call to be as expert as you can in giving good advice to your people is, I think, a big part of your leadership. And so I just saw a comment pop up about legislation that hasn't been passed. And so the Senate has passed the stimulus package, and the House is, if they haven't passed it yet, will pass it today. And President Trump has already said he's going to sign it. And so we do know now what's in that bill, and you can go to the Senate website and see that. We also already have guidance from the Department of Labor on the workers' comp and how that's going to be rolled out. And we also have information on the Small Business Administration about how that $300 billion worth of small business loans are going to be managed. And so again, we won't be able to get into all of those details today, but we will get in all of those details subsequently for those of you that continue on in this discussion. So the important part is to go to the source and not to the media. And so CDC, for what's going on from a public health standpoint, I have on my screen, of course, State of Indiana guidelines, because Indiana is one, as an example, because Indiana is one of the states that has a stay-at-home guideline, and more states, of course, as everybody knows, more states are adding to that. And we are going to talk about that. So what I'm going to give everyone an instruction on right now is that whatever state you're in right now, if you have a state stay-at-home guideline, go and read it. Indiana's came out on Monday, and within hours of it coming out, I was hearing all kinds of people talk about the Indiana executive order as if they actually knew something about it. And in about 5 minutes with talking with people, I found out that none of them had read it. And so come on, folks, let's be more intelligent than that. Let's actually go and read it. And this especially applies to us in construction, because each of those executive orders varies greatly on how it's interpreting what type of construction is essential service and who should be going to work. And so I'll come back and visit that a little bit more later, but your action item is go and read your states if you have an order. Another thing that I'm going to encourage you to do is, again, going to the source. I really should have put them in slightly different order. The next source I have is Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity, and Infrastructure Security. And I've given you their link on critical infrastructure workforce. And I caution all of you, because many of the stay-at-home orders that are being put out by the various entities, whether it's states, municipalities, cities, counties, etc., many of them use language that indicates that they are informed by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, critical infrastructure workforce. But as it turns out, many states are taking great license with that. And again, we'll talk more about that later. I have provided for you links below, and so I've got links for California and New York and Pennsylvania about essential services. I also have some information for you about, for example, what other countries are doing, because I work with contractors all over the world, and so what they're doing. And then also, I think it's useful to see how Canada is looking at it as well, because our brothers and sisters up north are looking, have a nationwide stay-at-home order. Right now, where we're at as a country, of course, everyone knows this, I think, is we don't have a national stay-at-home order. What we have is we have 50 states and one federal government and multiple other municipalities and governing areas who are kind of winging it, doing their own thing. You can make an argument that that's a states' rights thing versus a federalist kind of approach. Again, it's not about politics. It's about you as businesses understanding the contract under which you're working. A proclamation from the government, an executive order from the governor of the state is in fact equivalent to a law. And so you are obviously expected to respond to that and follow that law. So the assignment is go and read yours, go and visit the CDC, go and visit the Homeland Security website as well. So the next question I'm going to ask everybody, because we need to talk at least briefly, about the public health piece of it. And so I'll ask this question, and of everyone, is what does flattening the curve mean?
Isn't basically looking to extend the period of time over which people get cases. They're not necessarily trying to reduce the number of cases total, but reduce how quickly it spreads so that the hospitals can handle the patient load. It's not, it's if say if 100,000 people are going to get it, it's better that 100,000 people get it over 12 months than in 1 month.
Yeah, that's great. That was you, Marty, right?
Yeah.
Is that Marty? Yeah. No, that was great. And so as leaders in your companies, and all of your leaders in your company, you need to be able to explain to people, again, without the politics, what these kinds of things mean. And so part of that means you have to be able to intelligently and accurately articulate some basic things about epidemiology and about public health. And we'll talk more in a minute about the tension we have between public health and economics. And there is a tension there, and we are definitely going to talk about that. So, but in a nutshell, just like Marty said, flattening the curve is this. All right, so we know for sure what's going on here. COVID-19 is a virus that jumped species. And so we know that's true, and that's happened before with Ebola and SARS and other things. And it will continue to happen in the future. And so this is a virus that jumps species. All right, we don't have a vaccine for this virus, and so there is no cure right now. At most, what we do and what healthcare professionals are doing is treating symptoms to try to both make people feel somewhat more comfortable, and then also for those that are in critical care, survive. And so flattening the curve is not a cure. Flattening a cure is math. Flattening the curve is math. And so from an epidemiology standpoint, we know exactly how viruses that jump species act. One of the things that I get frustrated with is I hear intelligent people speak. They say, well, we don't know what's going to happen. That's bullshit. We know exactly how viruses act. And so how they act is that until a herd immunity is accomplished, then the herd is going to be infected with this virus. In order to achieve herd immunity, the humans on this planet, need to, about 70 to 80% of us need to get in some fashion this virus. And there's no question about the facts on that. And so the question is, how are we going to do that? Well, one way to do that is to not do anything at all and just keep doing business as usual and life as usual. And quickly the herd will be exposed and people will get it. And then people will get sick and get well, or people will get sick and not get well and die. And so that's one way to do it. The epidemiologists are suggesting that that's not the best way to go. And the primary reason is exactly like Marty said it was, which is we don't have the capacity to deal with this. So we don't have the hospital beds, we don't have the respirators, we don't have the mask, we don't have the proper PPE. And that is the reason why we're talking about flattening or dampening the curve. And we need to do that because that's the only way we can handle this crisis. Most Americans, and most people on this call are Americans and live in the United States. Most of us have an image in our head about what a hospital is and what a hospital looks at like. So when you had your children, or when your mom got sick, or you got sick, or what have you, you go into the hospital and it's clean. Its areas are cordoned off. The ICU, they only allow one person at a time, and so we have this image of what hospitals are, and many of us build hospitals. I built hospitals. Many of us build hospitals, and we have this image of what that is. But I'll warn everybody that that is the American hospital and the North American hospital and probably the European hospital as well. But I've done work in other countries, including in Kenya. And I'll tell you, when I was last in Kenya working at a hospital on projects, it's a little different than the United States. And it's a capacity problem, and it's a supplies problem. It's a supply chain problem. And so when I was in Kenya last working on a project, there are, of course, patients in beds in rooms, but there's a lot more beds in each room than we have in the United States. And then there's patients on beds in the hallway. And then there are patients on mattresses out on the grass. And so I know for most Americans, that's very difficult to imagine that. But if you're paying attention, we're doing that now, right? So we're building field army hospitals right now in New York and other places in parking lots, right? In tents without HVAC, without permanent electrical and those kinds of things. And so that pure and simple is a capacity problem. Today, Louisiana will hit its hospital capacity. We think today or tomorrow, New York City will hit its hospital capacity. What that means, period, is we can't deal with the volume of people that need to be treated. So that's not a political statement. That's a epidemiology and a science and a medical statement. So what we need to do is flatten the curve. We flatten the curve by doing this thing we talk about called social distancing, which everyone is kind of doing and everyone knows they're supposed to be doing, which is staying away from people, 6 feet away, but frankly, it's not working particularly well. And I think probably a big reason it's not working particularly well in the United States is because of just who we are, right? We all have and I'm proud to be an American, but we all have that independent spirit where we're entrepreneurial, we're independent, nobody can tell us what to do, and so forth. And so we're still seeing the students at spring break on the beaches. And last week in Washington, D.C., we still see all the masses of people at the Cherry Blossoms Festival. And then you and I, when we go grocery shopping, hopefully for essential needs, you still see Ma and Pa and their kids shopping for groceries and other things. Now, I think we're getting a little bit more serious, but I'm here to tell you we're not doing this quickly enough. What we do know for sure is there are some countries that are being more successful at this than we are, and they tend to be the Asian countries. Now, that's more than likely cultural, more than anything else, because of obedience to authority and those kind of things. But we know for sure in Singapore, in Taiwan, in Japan, in South Korea, and even in China, that that from an epidemiology standpoint and watching the curve, because this is talking about flattening the curve, we now have the steepest curve of any country, and that's not a good thing. Some of that, again, comes back to the independence and free will nature of ours. And I'm about as anti-authoritarian as it gets, but this gets back to public health versus epidemiology. So what's going to happen is if we're successful in the United States at flattening the curve, what will happen is, well, you tell me what will happen. So let's say we're successful and we flatten the curve. What's going to happen if we do that? Anybody? Right, I'll wait. I've got till 3:30. No, somebody tell me what's going to happen if we don't, if we do succeed in flattening the curve. What's going to happen?
If we flatten the curve, our hospital system is going to be able to handle hopefully most or all of these cases, as opposed to the other thing where they can't.
Yeah. So Michael's right. Is that if we do flatten the curve and we're not doing a good job, then we may be able to have the capacity that we need to deal with the medical and public health crisis. Then what's going to happen is we're going to have another spike, and epidemiologists are predicting that the spike will, and again, this is because we have decades, half a century of knowledge about these kinds of things from a science standpoint. We will have another peak hit us about towards the end of the year, sometime October, November, December, January. We're going to have another peak of illnesses, and often the second wave is worse. Now, this is not doom and gloom. This is not fear mongering. This is a business discussion about how to look at your business and how to look at, frankly, your employees and your families and other loved ones in moving forward in this. And so, if we don't dampen this curve, then we won't meet capacity. And then what we're going to have is we're going to have two crises going simultaneously. We're going to talk about the economic piece shortly. And so I'll hold the rest of that conversation for then. So let's get into the whole idea of healthcare and public health versus economics and the economy. So just to be clear on our definitions, healthcare is addressing the immediate needs of the patient. And so everybody understands what healthcare is. And so we've got to do that right now. And we are doing that. And I was talking to someone, Andrew Stetler, the other day, whose company works in about 11 different hospitals. And so the things that they're doing is nothing short of miraculous, both from a healthcare standpoint, but also in reconfiguring their hospitals rapidly to meet this current need. So that's health. We have to differentiate healthcare from public health. And this is where we're going to start to get into some challenges with our business, because in a nutshell, defining public health is taking the steps needed to keep the greater community safe. That's what public health is. And so all of those words matter, especially the keeping the greater community safe. So one of the sad ironies that we're gonna talk about in a second is everyone on this call is a builder, and everyone who is a builder understands the whole purpose of building codes. And the stated purpose of every building code, including no matter what trade you represent on this call, the stated purpose is to protect people and property, period. And everyone will agree with that. So go ahead and mute your mic if it's not muted, please, unless you're talking. And so it's to protect people and property, and that's exactly not the property piece, but the people piece. That's exactly what public health is all about. The steps to create the greater good, and keep the community safe. The Asian countries that we know are doing a better job of dampening the curve have done three things really well, and we're not doing any of those things particularly well right now yet in any of our states or in the nation as a whole. The three things they're doing that are working is testing, and especially massive testing. And everyone understands the problems with testing right now is that we don't have enough tests. In my opinion, we should mobilize at a national level, and we should force manufacturers and labs to produce those tests because the countries that are doing a good job, the best job with public health, are doing massive amounts of testing. Two, the second thing, that the countries that are successful in doing this, they're tracing the vectors. And what that means is they're finding case number one, and let's say, God forbid, I got it, and then being very explicit in finding everybody that I've touched and tracing those vectors, and they're doing it with GPSs, and they're doing a really good job with that. We are not at that point. We're doing very little of that at all. And then the third piece in dampening the curve is isolation, period. And I've already talked about isolation, but isolation may mean one thing to me, and another thing to you. And what we're really seeing in the United States is isolation is in the eye of the beholder. And from an epidemiology standpoint, that's a real problem. Now we'll shift over to the other side of the dilemma, and that's the economics and the economy. And everybody that's on this call knows me personally, or most everybody on this call knows me personally. You know that I'm an unrepentant capitalist. I've been successful in business. I've been in this business for 46 years, and I know how to make money, and I'm good at it. And so I get it. I am an unrepentant capitalist. And so I also know a lot about the economy. I sit on the board of a bank. I sit on the board of a utility company. I sit on other boards. And so I paid attention to the economy all the time. And so on this side of the equation, clearly the economic well-being of your businesses requires revenue. I get that. And so I'm definitely not going to argue against that. If we don't or can't work, we can't keep the doors open. And so if that's the case, then we can't stay in business. Now, the other thing that clearly goes along with that is this thinking for me as an employer is if I can't keep my doors open, I can't help anybody. And so forever in this business, I've always looked at my employees and known that they're what makes the engine go. Command number one in my company is support the craftsmen in the field. And so I get that. And so people matter to me greatly. And so on one hand, I feel like if I can't keep the doors open, then I can't improve people's lives. But the flip side of that we have to consider is, yes, but what choices are we making? And some more definitions of conversation quickly about public health. And so what public health is the health of the population as a whole, especially as the subject of government regulation and support. The branch of medicine dealing with public health, including hygiene, epidemiology, and disease prevention. And so I've got a longer definition below, but I think it's important that everybody understands exactly what public health is. And in a nutshell, it's this, folks. It's what do we need to do for the greater good, even if it means sacrificing personally or sacrificing perhaps at the company level. So that leads to the next just food for thought that I'm not going to go into in any detail is where are you at relative to helping others to be sustainable in this time of crisis? And so what's it going to take you, your loved ones, your employees, and your company to survive in the long term if you're going to do that? And then what's it going to take to thrive in the new reality? And so that's just food for thought. So we do know a bunch of things about the economy, and again, this is not politics. These are facts, and so we know for sure the jobless report came out today, and it came out first thing this morning, and the new jobless numbers are in. We have $3.28 million of new jobless claims, and many of you probably have seen that sometime today. And I've got a source there for you. That's 1,000% increase from the last jobless report. We have predictions that we're going to have another 14 million jobless by the summer of 2020. So just in a few months. And so we put that together, we're talking about 17, 18 million people out of work. If that doesn't shock you and really make you think that we need to take extreme measures now to both personally and professionally survive, then I don't know what would. And so when we go past that, I'm still hearing people talk about, well, this is going to take us into a recession. Folks, we're already past that. I'm not doom and gloom. We are in a depression. Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley came out late last week with their predictions, and Goldman Sachs says that the economy will shrink by about 24% next quarter, Morgan Stanley by about 30% next quarter, and then the president of the St. Louis Federal Reserve Bank says that he's predicting 50%. And these aren't people, especially the last one, these aren't people who are speculating and trying to sell you anything. These are people who are live and die by their projections about what's going on. Now, to remind everybody about what a robust economy looks like is that we typically look at the economy and say, if we have between 2.5% and 3% growth in GDP, we have a really healthy, robust economy. Our recovery from the 2007-2008 recession relied on, and it was achieved because of 2.5% to 3% growth. So when you pair that with the kind of numbers we're looking at from the large banks and from the Federal Reserve, it pales in comparison. And so this is it requires a dramatic sea change. So if we're talking about the economic health of your business, there are some things that you have to do right now that I will get into a lot more detail in subsequent classes. But in a nutshell, you have to protect your cash flow. We'll talk about more how to do that. You have to protect your revenue. You have to maintain profitability because it's not sustainable to have a negative bottom line for any length of time, and everyone knows that. And you need to correctly be making the right decisions at the right time. And I'll give you some examples of that here in just a second. Downsizing. If you haven't already been thinking about downsizing and have not already downsized, you're behind the curve. We need to be compassionate but decisive. You can't survive, period, if you aren't taking those measures. Are you cutting overhead fast enough? And so one of the rules of thumbs that I'm using right now and the companies I'm involved with is once we have remade our revenue projections and remade our cash flow projections for every single job, we are then making immediate overhead reductions to match. And so, for example, if I'm a $100 million company and I just derated my revenue projections for 2020 to 85 million, so that's a 15% cut. Then I'm going to immediately make a 20% cut in my overhead. And folks, if you're not doing that, as soon as you get off this call, you need to do that. I work with lots of companies, and like I've told you, and I was talking to a CEO yesterday about what he has done. And so in addition to the layoffs that many of you have already done, we're talking about instantly and immediately cutting salaries, including his. And so he has three divisions in his company. In two of the divisions, they cut all salaries by 20%. So everybody, if you're making 100 grand, now you're making 80, effective immediately. If your jobs are shut, if you're a project manager and you're managing 4 jobs and 2 of your 4 jobs have been shut down, now you're working 2 days a week and you're getting 2 days a week worth of your salary. In another one of his divisions, because of the sector that's in, the senior vice president who runs that division cut his own salary and all of his employees' salaries by 60%, not to 60%. So I know that sounds harsh, but this is what people who are being really proactive and getting ahead of this are doing. And I know for sure from talking to lots of people in the last 2 weeks, there's lots of people that are not doing that. There's lots of people that are treating this as what I call a snow day. And so, okay, well, we've been working from home. Maybe our state has a stay at home or shelter in place kind of thing. And it's a snow day, and that kind of feels fun when you're a kid. This is not a snow day. Winter is here. And so you need to be cutting your overhead fast enough. Again, this is in the survive piece, right? We'll talk more in the thrive piece later. So anticipating you're doing immediate cash flow cuts, immediate overhead cuts, anticipating problems with your supply chain, and then to begin to plan for inflation and hyperinflation. We now have pumped over the last 2 weeks about $4 trillion into the economy. Basic Economic 101 tells us what the result of that will be. We don't have $3 or $4 trillion to do this, nor are we going to cut some other significant areas of our budget back like military. And so what's going to happen, of course, is the Federal Reserve is going to be printing money. What happens with any national bank, with any federal bank, when we print money? What is the long-term ramification of printing money?
Inflation.
Inflation or hyperinflation. And so you're going to have to get your head around is what is that going to do to your company? How does that need to inform your actions? And so what you need to do is completely reevaluate all of your risk, thus all of your contracts, all of your proposals, and all of your correspondence. And I have some things I'm going to show you on that today. And then, of course, we'll share it in a deeper dive later. I have lots of links for you here to look at. I'm not going to click on any of them because of time, but I'm going to encourage you to click on them. And so the top batch there is a series of industry links. And so AGC, ABC, PHCC, IEC. Yeah, but I'll tell you what they all say. Here's what they all say. Well, I'll back up for a second. And all of you who know me know that I'm very heavily involved, especially with ABC, PHCC, and IEC, and heavily involved with all those. And there's two things primarily that industry associations do. They do education and they do lobbying, period. That's what they do. That's what they're really good at. And we're thankful that we have them. All of them are lobbying in your best interest right now as economic entities. And I'm not sure that's the right thing. If I were to click on any one of them, and I would if we had time, let's say the IEC one, what the IEC one says essentially, and all of the other ones are derivatives of that, is, hey, we have let Congress know, we've let mayors know, we've let everyone we can, government know that construction is an essential industry, and therefore we should not be included in any of these shutdowns or stay-at-homes or whatever. Now, most of us as contractors look at that and say, yay, team, you've gone and lobbied for us. But I'm going to ask you in a few minutes here to really morally and ethically consider that. If we look at the other sites, I've got Bechtel and Turner, so both large general contractors, what their sites say. And so that is contrasted to the 4 links below that, which take a much different approach to this. And so on one hand, we have the economic lobby that is, we believe, will help our companies, but then we have this other dilemma that we're dealing with right now. So I've got an interview with James Stockdale from Jim Collins that I do want to go through with you here. And so if you remember, James Stockdale was a POW in Vietnam. He was shot down and he was tortured to a dramatic degree, ends up going, obviously returning home, surviving, and he ended up becoming a vice president candidate with Ross Perot quite some time ago. Jim Collins, of course, wrote the book Good to Great, which many of you have read. I do want to go through this. And so during this interview, here's what Stockdale says. Because I never lost faith in the end of the story. I never doubted not only that I'd get out, but also that I would prevail in the end and turn the experience into the defining events of my life, which in retrospect, I would not trade. When Collins asked him, who didn't make it out of the POW camp, Stockdale replied, oh, that's easy, the optimist. They were the ones who said, we're going to be out by Christmas, and then Christmas would come and Christmas would go. And then they'd say, we're going to be out by Easter, and then Easter would come and Easter would go. And then Thanksgiving, and then it would be Christmas again, and they died of a broken heart. This is a very important lesson, Stockdale continued. You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be. I'm going to argue that there are many, many Americans, many people probably globally, who are confusing faith that they will prevail with confronting the brutal facts of your current reality. And this class is all about helping you to confront those brutal facts and then successfully deal with them. This is the situation each of us is facing right now. So this is not from the interview, this is me. We want to be optimists. We want to believe that this pandemic is going to magically vanish tomorrow morning and that we'll all be able to go on with our lives as if nothing has changed, but that's not going to happen. The brutal facts of our reality are that this pandemic continues to spread rapidly and it has the potential to kill millions of people. Reducing that projection requires shutting down the entire global economy, resulting in a wide range of catastrophic consequences, including tens of trillions of dollars, wiping out, prosperity wipeout, countless jobs lost, millions of bankruptcies and defaults, entire governments going broke. Right now, there's a prediction that at least 6 countries will go bankrupt and more. And this is from economists, not politicians. Saving the economy condemns millions to die. This is the equation. But saving millions from dying condemns hundreds of millions to suffer. These are the facts, and they're brutal. To make matters even more difficult, we're also dealing with a tremendous uncertainty. There's no telling what's going to happen next. I hear from contractor after contractor, well, we don't know what's going to happen, so we're just going to go ahead and keep doing this. Please stop that. We do know some things are going to happen. We do know about epidemiology, and we do know about economics, and we do know we're making choices. We could see martial law, supply chain disruptions, national defaults, looting, bank failures, even hyperinflation. Every scenario is on the table, even ones that seemed unthinkable just a few weeks ago. Anyone who says there's no way that could happen clearly doesn't grasp what's happening. And frankly, we haven't even seen the real problems yet. Just wait until the healthcare system is totally overwhelmed, the unemployment rate soars, and major companies start declaring bankruptcy. I mean, there are still millions of people around the world right now, including countless shit-faced university students on spring break, who aren't taking this pandemic seriously. We're clearly still in the opening phase of this crisis, so things could become much worse before they improve. But amid such harsh circumstances and uncertainty, we should recognize, as Stockdale did, that the world is not coming to an end. We can't afford to be misguided, ignorant optimists who irrationally believe that everything will go back to normal tomorrow morning with no consequences. Everyone needs to confront the brutal facts of our reality, both the challenges and the opportunities, but never lose faith that we're going to prevail in the end, because, of course, what's the choice? We've never been asked to make this kind of moral decision in our business lives before. Nobody in this call can say that. I've been doing this 46 years, which makes me one of the older people on the call. And no, maybe if your grandparents owned a business in 1929, maybe they had the same kind of decision to make, but none of us on this call have done this. And here's the decision you have to make: public health or economic survival of the business. I'm not saying we need to close our doors. I'm saying this is an either or situation. If we don't flatten the curve, what's going to happen is you're going to get the worst of both worlds: all of the healthcare issues and deaths and illnesses, and the tremendous economic failure. So all of us on this call as business people have to own up to the fact that you have to make the decision for you and for your companies. Don't let yourself off the hook by rationalizing that you're following your state's stay-at-home policy, if your state has one. Your projects are all essential services, and I'm hearing an awful lot of contractors say that. Hey, it's construction, it's all essential service. I'm sorry, folks. If you're building a 3-story office building right now for an owner on Main Street downtown in your city, and if your state has put out such a broad stay-at-home policy like Indiana, then by rights, you have every right to be working. But you need to ask yourself as a human being, what moral and ethical decision are you making? And I'll tell you what the answer is. The answer is you have chosen the economic over the public, over the personal safety of your employees. And if that's a decision you want to make, that's a decision you make, but you can't be in denial. So I say, own your morality and your ethics. Many of your employees will still want to work. That's driven by economics, of course. The average American last year, when surveyed, couldn't, in the case of emergency, come up with $400. So the questions you need to ask yourself is, what's your job as a leader, and what's your job as a fellow citizen? And so I can't make the decisions for you. You have to make them. So I will tell you a tale of 2 CEOs, though. And so I got 2 CEOs, many CEOs that I'm working with, but in this case, two events that happened this week. One was I had a board meeting on Tuesday of this week with the utility that I serve on as a board member, and of course, as an electric utility, we are an essential service, and we have to keep the lights on, no doubt about it. Now that CEO has done all the things that all of you did. He mandated that people work from home. He locked the doors to the building. He mandated 6 foot and all of those things that everyone did. Every responsible business person did. He did all those things. But of course, we still have electricians in the field doing the line work and the repair work. And to keep the lights on, we have to do that. But the question you have to ask, if you're that CEO, is, yes, but we also have a work plan, a multi-million-dollar work plan every year on upgrading lines, replacing lines, and so doing preventive maintenance. Now, the question you have to ask is any of that preventive maintenance not really essential during this time when we need to flatten the curve? Or is it our desire to generate revenue and to keep people working because they want to, And that's a question you have to ask. Another division that we have in this utility is telecom and broadband. And so we have a $100 million broadband plan that we're putting in place. So putting fiber in place and bringing fiber to homes and businesses. And we have a $100 million plan. And our business plan for 2020 relies heavily on generating that revenue and cash flow. And so in the board meeting on Tuesday with the CEO and the rest of the board, I raised the issue about, okay, yes, what we're doing is essential, but is all of it is essential? And have we done the revised cash flow projections? Because what we should be doing as companies is we should be making 3 cash flow projections. 1, what is our D-rated worst case cash flow projection for 2020? 2, what's the middle of the road cash flow projection? And 3, what's the best case cash flow projection for 2020? And we should do those and then make the immediate changes that we need to make, and then the long range strategic changes we need to make just as soon as possible. What the response of the CEO for the utility and so we're not going to change the thing. The question that I posed then was, okay, so you are okay with potentially sending out our workers to their deaths. And I know that sounds harsh, but I think that's a reliable context. And I've talked to many people over this last couple of weeks who are either military or former military, and they agree with me that that's an apt analogy. Are we let's say it's World War I, are we the generals and majors and colonels in London sending the boys into the trenches in World War I to face the mustard gas and that horror that we faced there? And that's a legitimate question. The flip side is the second CEO, and he's the one that I was telling you about a minute ago that he whacked everybody's salary. As a team, they whacked everybody's salary by 20% to keep people working. And then the other division, 60%. And they have rapidly, actually a week ago, Monday was my first call with him about rapid and immediate things to do. And he's done those things very, very quickly to help his business to survive. He also is struggling with the question because they work in multiple states. And so they work in Michigan and in the Southeast region and other areas in the Midwest. And so, of course, where the states that they have shelter in place, their revenue, they've even downgraded it since last Monday. But in his North Carolina and South Carolina divisions, they still have all their people working. And so I called him out on it and said, is that the right thing to do? With that in mind, we need to think about everybody on this call pays great attention in your company to safety, and you say you do, and you certainly act like you do, and you act as if it's a big deal. So I'm going to give you some context. And so according to the CDC website, there are a total of 44,000 cases of COVID-19, and this was 2 days ago. 544 which have been fatal. Now we're over 1,000. We're at 1,102 as of right this second. That would mean that there is a fatality rate of 1.23%. In the construction industry, we do so many things to mitigate safety risk posed to our field workers. This can be seen with any number of PPE items, hard hats, boots, etc., as well as any other safety measure like ladder tie-offs and rooftop delineators. All of those safety measures are to mitigate the impact of risks that have a lower fatality rate than COVID-19. Looking at the statistics provided by OSHA, there were approximately 1,008 fatal construction accidents in 2018. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there were 7.4 million construction workers in 2018. That would mean we require more stringent safety protocol for a slew of issues combined, which pose a fatality rate of 0.01%. Math is math. COVID-19 continues to infect the population at an alarming rate with much higher fatality than all construction accidents combined. With a virus that has no known cure, no vaccine, is spreading rapidly throughout the globe, I suggest we take a more stringent course offered by leading experts. The CDC/White House recommends a 15-day pause. The 15-day pause is designed to slow the spread of the virus and allow medical experts to keep up with potential demand. There's a possibility that the pause could or should be longer than 15 days. with 7.4 million construction workers and a test positive rate of 17%, that would mean 1.2 or 1.3 construction workers would contract the virus. Of those 1.2 or 3, at 1.2%, that means about 15,000 would die, which is 15 times greater than OSHA's fatal 4. So here's an email that was sent out by one of the people I was talking to yesterday, who happens to be a veteran, and he's also a construction worker. And he sent this email to his customer. He says, "I'm going to continue doing my research, but what I'm finding seems to be alarming. I know there are safety measures outside of social distancing that can be taken, but I believe social distancing is the only effective measure." And so here's the summation: the OSHA deaths, the BLS statistics, fatality rate, and then here's the calculation. He says, "I know there's a lot left to learn on this pandemic, but this is far more than OSHA's fatal 4. And of course, the subtext is there is, I don't think we're doing the right thing. I was talking to someone else, a contractor from Chicago 2 days ago, and he said his company has included procedures like no more than one person may ride in a company truck, and that's a policy, and that's just similar to all of the other COVID-19 construction company policies, and that seems to make sense. And but then he said, so he had two guys that day show up on a job in 2 different trucks, and then they were on a 2-man auger, and with 2-man auger you got to have both men on it, and so both men are on the 2-man auger, and so that's not 6 feet. That's not social distancing. And in fact, now we have a high possibility of transmission. I'm sorry, folks, we're not doing the right things. So now some thoughts on how you should expect your customers to respond to your efforts. And so now I'm going to give you a quick case study of a case of things that were happening last week in California. So California was the first state to issue a stay-at-home order. It was on March 13th. And so this is a quick case on how a particular project unrolled relative to working on the job in these times. So it's a residential project, San Francisco Bay Area, March 16th. And this is from the project manager of the GC to all subs and suppliers. And this was last Monday at 4:02 p.m. The reference, the residential project, and the job site closure. Team, please be advised that all GCXX construction projects in the 7 Bay areas are now suspended effectively immediately due to the order of public health officers in response to the coronavirus. The order was issued this afternoon by public health officers of Alameda, Contra Costa, etc. According to the order, all residents in those counties are directed to shelter at home for 3 weeks, beginning March 17th. The order limits activity, travel, and business functions to only the most essential needs. Because construction is not listed as essential service under the order, all construction activities in these counties and this project is being suspended immediately. In compliance with the order, the GC is requiring you to immediately suspend your operations and demobilize. So that letter went out March 16th at 4 p.m. Well, you can imagine, so in my opinion, the general contractor did exactly the right thing here. And then you can imagine what happened next. Well, within 2 hours, so at 6:24 p.m., the owner's representative responded to that project manager's boss saying this. Dear Senior Project Manager, in reading through the shelter in place order, I noticed in section 10, paragraph C, that, quote, essential infrastructure includes construction of housing. Here is a copy of that paragraph. For the purposes of this order, individuals may leave their residence to provide services or perform any work necessary to the operations and maintenance, quote, essential infrastructure, including but not limited to public works construction, construction of housing, then parentheses, in particular affordable housing, or for individuals experiencing homelessness, airports, blah, blah, blah. So now this is the owner saying, no, this project is essential. Now I'll tell you a little something about this project. This project is a mixed-use facility with 2,300 residential units in it in the San Francisco Bay Area. So that's a lot of residential units. And so it is, in fact, at least a large component of the project is residential. All right, so this is the owner pushing back saying, no, you need to be out here. All right, then after that went out, so just a few minutes later, of course, that was then transmitted by subs to their suppliers and vendors, et cetera. Within just a few minutes, a national product supplier responded to the owner's representative saying, time out, I don't care what you say, out of concern and for the safety of our employees, we're going to keep them home until further notice and direction from the city and the health department. This is a potentially dangerous situation, I believe, takes precedence. Then the next day, the next morning at 7:48, there's a memo from the senior project manager to all subs and suppliers. We will be remaining open for work on the residential portion of the project under Section 10C of the San Mateo County Order. Please work to mobilize your workers to perform work on the project. Should your team have any questions, please contact us, blah, blah, blah. This, what you're looking at now on the screen, is the order from the state of California. And this is what was highlighted by the owner of the project. So he highlighted in yellow essential infrastructure, and then he highlights construction of housing. He doesn't highlight the parentheses, however, because in parentheses it says, in particular, affordable housing or housing for individuals experiencing homelessness. So then I talked to a project manager of a subcontractor on this project, and I asked that project manager, I said, so this project is 2,300 housing units for affordable housing or for homelessness? And the project manager just laughed at me. He said, no, that's not what this project is. He said the cheapest residential unit that we're building is a studio condominium that will start sales price at $3.5 million. So, of course, what this is, we're all, and if you know me and you've been in a contracts class with me, you know that contracts are all about the words, and we all can interpret the words however we want to. But we're in this example, we're going past the line of interpreting the words because the owner is interpreting the words essential infrastructure and construction of housing, ergo, you should be out here working. And if not, of course, the threat is, if not, then I'm going to bring all of the contract clauses I have to bear on you, including perhaps terminating your contract and replacing you. I think that that's immoral. I think that that's unethical, and it doesn't meet the spirit of this order. Now, this is the California order. If I showed you the Indiana order, well, there's no real reason to include construction in the Indiana order because it essentially includes any construction is essential, therefore you're fine. You're fine except for that ethical moral issue of sending people to their deaths. So I've got some more links here for some of those orders, and you can look at that in your own time. So the next thing that you have to do now, I think as a business executive or businessman, what is an essential service? As I was talking to the CEO of the company that they dramatically cut their own wages, I called him out on it. I know him personally. I said, look, I know what you're doing. You're keeping revenue in play in the southern states that aren't issuing these orders. But if you have people dropping light fixtures or installing water closets on commercial projects that have nothing to do with food processing or healthcare or critical supplies, supply chain kind of things, then in your heart of heart and in your brain as a human, you know that's not really essential services. What you're doing is you're choosing cash flow over the health and safety of your employees. And I'm not going to make that call for anybody in here, but then you have to make the tough business decisions for you. Certainly, I have a very clear opinion on this. So the questions is what are you doing right now for your own sustainability? And so in the short term, well, obviously, I've talked about cutting wages and doing layoffs and all of these things, which we'll get into in much more greater depth in the weeks to come. But in the short term, obviously, a stockpile of food and necessities. Don't hoard, but be prepared. This is not going to be a 2-week thing. This is going to be a multiple month thing. If any of you believe in listening to the public health experts like Dr. Fauci, it is not a 2-week deal. You need to stay at home. We all need to stay at home. Need to stay in touch. Mental health is a big deal right now. Everyone is having anxiety. We need to help our family, our friends, our employees to stay safe and sane. We need to stay physically, intellectually, and spiritually active, and we need to have some cash on hand. That's more the personal nature, but also business. Longer term planning, I already talked about making these 3 cash flow projections, and again, we'll do that in more detail in the class later. And begin planning for a very long economic recovery. This is not a recession. This is not a year or two like the recession in 2007, 2008. This is a decade-long, if not generation-long problem that we are going to have to grow out of. And frankly, people like me at 62, I probably won't live to see us getting all the way out of this, but I'm going to be fighting every step of the way to be successful and frankly, to make money while we're doing this. But take your rose-colored glasses off. You need to have a backup plan to whatever employment options you believe you have. The construction industry is going to be hit very hard. I know I have lots of project managers on this call. If it didn't shock you at all that this successful company that I was talking to you in Michigan is having project managers who are making $150,000 go down to getting paid for 2 days worth of work a week, then your head is in the stand. And so you personally need to have a plan. Your company needs to have a plan. Then you need to learn what specific and value and expertise you add and make sure you can clearly demonstrate that to both your companies and also to your customers. Now, as we get near the end of this, there's some things you have to do right now. And again, all this will be up in Dropbox. If you haven't sent this notification letter already to your customers, you are behind the curve. And so you need to send this notification letter. Dear customer, the COVID-19 pandemic, which has been declared a national emergency by President Trump on March 13th, and by local authorities, blah, 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 has caused unanticipated delays and increased costs of the above referenced project that were beyond the contractor's control. See sections blank of the contract. In particular, a contractor has experienced the following delays and impacts to project performance, XXX, and the project has been suspended if it has. Contractor requested extension of time of X days in response to COVID-19 delays and impacts. Contractor invites the owner to participate in a conference call to discuss this request for time extension and to outline a plan to reduce the impact on the contract time and contract price. In addition, contractor is experiencing increased costs resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic, including blank, 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 blank. Contractor is collecting its cost and will provide updated information to the owner in the near future. In the meantime, we're available to discuss different options to reduce the amount of cost incurred in connection with the project. Contractor reserves all rights and remedies it has pursuant to the contract, is confident it will be able to get through these events with the owner and all project participants. So you need to send that notification letter today if you haven't already sent it. Now, relative to your proposals, because everyone, I'm assuming, is continuing to propose work, you should, but now you need to add a clause to your proposal. And so this is what that looks like. So you need to immediately include this language in your proposal. This proposal is explicitly subject to change, including but not limited to increased costs and delays as a result of the coronavirus COVID-19 and resulting price escalations, delays in manufacturing and or delivery of materials and equipment, labor shortages, and negative labor fluctuations. The contractor expressly reserves the right to withdraw this proposal in the event of a shelter-in-place order or any directive from any authority having jurisdiction that the work is suspended, prohibited, delayed, canceled, or shut down. You got to send this out with make it part of every proposal. You should expect, if you're a subcontractor, an unpleasant response from your general contractor and the owner. And so I have given you a link here. I'm not going to open it, but I've given you a link of what you should expect to get from the general contractor and the owner relative to work suspension. Should you do as I suggest, which is if you're not working on a project that has essential services, they're going to try to throw you off the job and terminate your contract. This is from a law firm who works for GCs and owners. I think you need to get your head around that, what that looks like. And I would argue that if you look at cash flow and revenue, there are in fact some contracts and some projects that actually makes more sense for you to be terminating instead of them terminating you from a business standpoint. The next thing that's really important that you need to do immediately is you need to go and read your contracts immediately and look for the force majeure clause. And so since we're running out of time, I'm not going to ask you if you know what force majeure is. I'm going to instead show you what force majeure is. So let me do that. So let me change the slide to a web page here. Bear with me for 1 second. All right, so now that's opening. And so I need to change my screen one more time. And so I'm providing you with one more tool, and this is emblematic of the types of tools that I'm going to be providing should you decide to join the class. All right, so now I'm sharing with you that web page. And so this is from an attorney out of the UK. I'm sorry, out of the UK, but actually living in Hong Kong. And so this is the legal consequences of COVID on your contracts, force majeure in different jurisdictions and industries, and some practical guidance. And so I'm not going to go at great length here. I'm not going to get into this. I expect you're going to read this. And so force majeure, most of you tend to think of in terms of an act of God. We clearly can say this time with this virus that COVID-19 is an act of God, is in fact a force majeure event. But I also will tell you, if I'm an owner building buildings anytime in the future subsequent to this, if another pandemic or something like this hits, I will have language in my contracts that you're not going to be able to claim force majeure, because we know that this is going to be an ongoing thing, just like the 100-year storm is now longer not happening every 100 years, but really pretty much every year. I've got lots of information in this article about what you should be doing right now. And then the most important thing in this document and why I'm giving it to you is it gives you a flow chart of how to review your contracts. And then it also gives some really good definitions of the contract language that you should pay close attention to. So there's a definition of force majeure. There's also a legal word called frustration, and you should know what that means relative to your contracts. Is the force majeure clause valid and enforceable? What's an epidemic? What's a pandemic? I've heard smart people in the recent weeks business owners tell me, well, we don't really have a good definition for a pandemic. That's bullshit. We know exactly what a pandemic is. We have legal definitions of pandemics. When can contracts be renegotiated? Well, we know in the United States, they can be renegotiated at any time. And then I also have information here about if you're doing work in other countries. Well, I need to give notice of a force majeure event. Yes, I just gave you that notice. What to send? Can I suspend or terminate? And I've got information about that as well. And then here's a flow chart on how to be, I'm not going to blow it up, but how to be looking at your contracts. And so does your contract have a force majeure clause? If yes, go to the right. If no, go to the left, and so forth. So now I'm going to stop sharing that and go back to my PowerPoint. But I think that that's a useful tool and for you to go and to review your contracts just as quickly. All right, so now I'm coming back to the PowerPoint, and we only have a couple of minutes, and so I will finish up, but I also leave you with some homework because you know me. So one homework piece is you need to understand your unemployment benefits in your state, how they have changed, and you need to understand the federal stimulus package and to help your employees understand it. You also, I believe, have a moral obligation to help them to get it. And so the package that's being signed is up to $600 a week for 4 months, on top of federal stimulus, on top of state unemployment. Also, as small businesses, you get tax credits of 50% of employees' wages, up to $10,000 over the next 4 months. And this is intended, Congress intending you to not lay people off. And so $10,000 doesn't go very far, but if you can keep somebody working for another 2, 3, or 4 weeks to make a huge difference in their life, do it. You get the tax credit. Don't do the wrong thing. Before you sign any contracts, review all your language, insert COVID-19 language and subsequent events language into your contracts, and be prepared to negotiate vigorously. Insurers now are on top of this, and they are now providing COVID-19 policies. I'm going to talk more about that later on in the class. There just wasn't enough time to talk about it today in this class. Some gentle homework assignments to get you started. I want you to read the links and watch the videos on the attached slides. And so a Bill Gates video from 2015, and Bill Gates was all over this and ahead of this 5 years ago. Stop watching bullshit movies like Contagion and Pandemic unless you're really into the horror shit show, and instead learn something about pandemics. There's a great documentary on Amazon Prime called Unseen Enemy. It's not political. It will give you a much more well-rounded basis in all of the science here. Then I've posted some good articles that now are 5 days old. Can we avoid a global depression from Politico? We're not going back to normal. So that's from the MIT Technology Review. Another one, coronavirus will change the world permanently. Here's how. Beyond Coronavirus, The Path to the New Normal by McKinsey and Company. Safeguarding Our Lives and Our Livelihoods, The Imperative of Our Time, again by McKinsey. Addressing the Needs of Customers in Delinquency Impacted by the Coronavirus. And then this is an older article, but appropriate because part of this class is going to be about strategy. And so this is McKinsey and Company on strategy under uncertainty. So it's 3:29 now. There's some more sites on the medical side of it, and I'll just leave this slide on. And so I'll make this statement as we get to the end of this. Is this the longest that I will talk in this class and presentation on these things? This is intended to be a working session to field all of your questions, to have live conversations about what people are doing. That really wasn't the intent today. The intent was to introduce it. It is my intent to provide this, to provide 3 hours a week for the next 8 to 10 weeks to go into deep detail about these things, to provide even more examples to show you how to do those cash flow projections and revenue projections and change your contracts, and to listen to what you have to say about the issues and problems you're having and so forth, to struggle with the ethical and moral issues about what to do about employees. And so we're going to do all of that. And so with that, I'm going to stop talking. I will stay on and keep the WebEx open until the last of you has left. And so with that, I'm going to shut the hell up and let you all ask questions, talk, throw things at me virtually, whatever you like to do. So was any of that worth listening to or listening to about? Was any of that worth listening to?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. So I do welcome all of your thoughts and issues and concerns and those kinds of things. And I really do want to have this massive, important conversation that we need to be having from across the country and across the world. And that's exactly what we're going to do. What it's going to take is a commitment of all of us to spending the time to do this. So I've shown you on the PowerPoint how to send me your feedback on that. And then I will be sending out very quickly here, probably by tomorrow, when we're going to be doing this. And so anyway, I'll hang on, whether it's for half an hour or 3 hours. I'll hang on for however long anybody else wants to hang on. But short of that, I'm going to kick it back to John just for a second to say whatever he wants to say, unless it's another shameless plug for money, because I haven't done any of that for money. And so other than that, John, do you have anything you want to say to the group before we sign off?
Yes, if you want to make sure that you hear more about these sessions and you want to get access to the recording of this and the links, the very best way is to send that email to the address that Kirk put up on the screen and that I'm going to pop into the chat right now. Because the screen doesn't necessarily show us everybody's email addresses. So that's a good way for us to collect those and stay in touch with you. And it's a way of opting in so that we're not bugging the people who don't want to hear more about it.
Yeah. So if John, if you don't have anything else, then people can leave when they want. And like I say, I'll stick on until people are all gone. So, I've got my coffee cup, and none of you know what's in it. I'm pretty sure I know what's in it. So it might start with a B and end with herb. So I think that's the best way to approach this. So if I hopefully I'll see you all next week. If not, I'll hang on and talk to you. So thanks for coming.
Kirk?
Yes.
This is Dan McGuire with Clover. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. How are you?
Good. How's your frog doing?
The frog's doing pretty well. It's weird. It's good you asked. We had a blow up a number of classes ago where somebody got the frog, and this was a senior project manager from a company, and he lost his freaking mind over getting it. It was amazing. And so I kind of put the frog into retirement because I was just shocked with his how much it affected him. But his company did then pull him from the class. So I'm bringing the frog back. You know what? The frog is a useful tool. Would you agree, Dan?
Yeah, I would agree. I felt honored that I got the frog.
Yeah. What's that?
I felt honored that I got the frog.
Amen, brother. So you know what I'm going to do in this class? We're going to have a virtual frog, and we're gonna bring the frog back because the frog belongs. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's your vision of with shutting down job sites, construction sites, and things? What is your vision of how long that would last? If you're going to make a wild ass guess.
Yeah. So from what public health experts tell us is that, and Fauci's one of those, but it's not just him, is that 4 to 5 weeks is really what people are looking is if as a country, so not, I'll go beyond just construction projects. If as a country, we can dampen the curve, then 4 to 5 weeks added to, the multiple weeks we already had, should get us there. In the Asian countries, what we're seeing is somewhere between 6 and 8 weeks has really dampened the curve, and that's been very helpful. We're now 2 or 3 weeks into this, and so realistically, we're looking at another 4 to 5 weeks as a minimum. But the whole idea, and I'm really saddened to hear people talking about, we'll be back up and running by Easter. No, that's not true, and that's just false hope. And I hope we're not back out there, because what's going to happen is then we will have a healthcare catastrophe at the hospitals like we're experiencing right now in Louisiana and New York. So short answer, 4, 5, 6 weeks.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you've been saying there too. And then what work do you think in construction you think will be popping up more prevalently than?
Yeah. So we're gonna really do a deep dive in that, because I'm all about sales and marketing, and so I always see crisis, and we always should, as I know how to get wealthy. You've all heard me say this before. You get wealthy by solving other people's problems. So it's a matter of sitting down and making a list of, okay, what do we need as a society, as an industry? Anything having to do with healthcare, anything having to do with food production, anything having to do with supply chain, anything having to do with energy, power, water, et cetera. And of course, that list will go on. And of course, a big piece of this is about maintenance and service, right? So maintenance, service, and then reconfiguring existing lines on a plant floor, or operating theaters, or patient rooms in hospitals. And so lots of renovation and rehab and service and repair. What will not be and should not be is new construction. A question that came up, I was talking to a couple of hospital execs the other day, and I asked them, I said, if you have a hospital that's supposed to be starting new construction this week, but it's not going to be complete for 24 months, is that really essential construction? And to a person, they said no. Now, who knows? If we don't dampen the curve, then the answer is probably yes. Or if we can get this hospital online in 9 months, that is definitely yes. But it's going to be those kinds of things. But I was really embarrassed for the district and saddened to hear someone tell me, who does mostly schools. They said, I was talking to them yesterday, and they said, well, we do a lot of schools, and schoolwork that was planned to be done in the summer, the school board is now telling us, hey, since the kids are all home and they're going to be home the rest of the year, we're going to get you in there doing the schools. I'm sorry. I think that's morally indefensible. That's not essential infrastructure. We can have more kids in the classroom in the fall if we didn't build this wing on, or what have you. What we're doing is potentially sending our construction workers to their deaths. That's morally irresponsible. And so what's happening, and I get it as a businessman, we're being, both owners and contractors are being opportunistic and, getting while the getting's good, striking while the iron's hot, et cetera. But that's why I asked everybody to consider the moral decisions you're making, because most of us aren't putting it in that light, and we have to. But that said, there's a lot of work, and I've already, and again, one of the things we'll do in this class is, now we know there's $500 billion going to large companies. And so I promise you, I have a marketing strategy for how to approach those large companies in the transportation sector, the hospitality sector, et cetera, and energy, et cetera. And there's 300 million going to small businesses. I have an idea and a plan. And part of what we're going to talk about in this class is, how do we go and get some of that, right? And so how do we pivot to go and capture those funds that are available? Because that money will go relatively quickly. And we have to have a strategy on how to go capture it while doing good. Right. So that's my answer.
Mm-hmm. Now, is this class, it's a public service?
You know, that's how I'm doing it. I think I've thought about it, and you know, I've thought about, well, you know, is there a funding mechanism for this? Right now, the answer for today was no. I think though, you know, the way I think I'm going to put it is, if it has value, then we're going to find a way for you all to show some exchange of value both to PHCC and to me. If it doesn't have value, or you don't feel like it, you should do anything. You know what? I'm okay with that too. This is not the time for me to be worried about that. This is not the time for PHCC to be worried about that. We're a bunch of friends and colleagues who need to do the right thing right now, and that's what I'm going to do. And so whatever's going to happen is going to happen. I'm not going to worry about those kinds of things. You know, we're all being banned. No, I don't care how much money you have. I see Terry in there. Hi, Terry. No matter how much you have money you have like Terry or I, we're still all getting killed. I've counted literally since this started. I've lost more than $1 million easily, but that's not why I'm doing this. Right? Let's figure out how to do the right thing for our friends, our family, our communities, our associations, and the rest of it's going to work itself out. That's where I'm.
That's always been your way.
That's it. That's right. So, yeah. So if we could get 1,000 people in this class in our industry, I would be ecstatic. You know, I'd just be ecstatic. That's what we need to do. And so I encourage all of you. I should have said that while everybody was still on. Tell everybody, get your customers, your vendors, get everybody on. And this isn't about money. This is about what do we need to do as an industry to do the right thing and to come out on the right side of this. So that's, yeah. So
is it the time to continue to build apprenticeship? I mean, I'm big on that. It's there gonna be enough work out there to keep building people?
So here's my answer. And so I did a lot of talking about coming out of recessions after the last recession. And one of the things that we need to do, one of the things that smart people always do during difficult economic times, is continue to build capacity, right? And so continue to build capacity means continuing to bring young people in, training them. Now we'll have to do a lot more virtual training, and I have mixed feelings about that. I think it has some benefits and also some downside. But the short answer is yes, we need to keep bringing young people in, and we need to keep recruiting. Now, how do we pay for that? Well, that's going to be the tough piece, and this may be us going to getting some of that federal money and or state money to help us to support continuing to grow young people into this business. So that's where our lobbying arms are going to come into play. And frankly, every company on this call needs to have somebody right now, an executive, who is focused on how to tap into that money. So short answer is, yeah, we got to keep building capacity. That's the thriving piece. We can't just kill our industry.
I totally agree that that's what hurt us. So I appreciate your help. I'll keep listening, but I'll let somebody else take over. Thanks a lot. God bless you, Kirk. I appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate that. I see people going away. I see people staying. Anybody that's staying, if you've got something to ask or whatever, throw it out there. No wrong question.
Kirk, it's Tyler Carlton. How you doing, man?
I'm good, Tyler. How are you, man?
Yeah, good. Thanks. Hey, thanks for setting us up. This has been great and certainly enlightening. I mean, you know, we've actually been on the opposite side of your conversation. Picking up work and things have been going, you know, shockingly good, you know, right now for us, and everything's considered essential. You know, now I'm gonna have to question, you know, what we're doing and where we're going.
Yeah.
So do you see this as like this trend or this to start this process as like small companies coming together and saying, okay, we're done working? I mean, the GCs are pushing through, you know, they want to continue work. Is this going to be the smaller contractors banding together and saying, hey, we're done, you know, from a moral standpoint, we're done working until this passes? Or is this like the big guys, like the Turners and the Kiewits?
No, see, that's it. And that's a really good question, Tyler. It's not just the big guys. It's that Well, this is where the nice thing is we're all humans and we all have to make this business decisions. And so, no, I think it's everybody has to make those decisions and get to your customers as quickly as possible and start having these conversations, because frankly, there's not enough people thinking about all of the domains of the issue, right? And so part of what I couched today was it is a tension between public health and economics, and none of us have ever had to make this call before. But now you do, and now we all do. And there will be some customers that say, go to hell, we're going to terminate you, we're going to sue you, all those kind of things. It's like, and some of us on the right projects are going to have to say, okay, fine, do what you need to do. Like I told you, in other countries with large contracts, with multinational companies, and they're canceling contracts right now, and then immediately renegotiating the things that are essential, and that's going to happen at all levels. And so it really comes back to, and this is, and I know you, so I can say this, and I've also been tracking your emails between you and Nate, so that's good. And so I'm glad you're still having that conversation with him. No, this is about Tyler Carlton deciding what is the right call to make, and then going, and I know you're a good guy, going to your customers and saying, hey, this is the call that we need to make. How do we work through this or work out of this? And no, I don't think it has to do with size. And one of the things on that one slide that I put between Bechtel and Turner, as you can see, two radically different approaches to this. Bechtel is taking much more the approach that I'm advocating, and Turner is essentially saying we're going to keep working until they stop us, whoever they are. So now I don't think it's a size thing. I think the cool thing about it being a moral and ethical issue is it doesn't matter what size it is. What's the right thing to do for you and your company and your people? So
Right. Yep.
I had Tyler's in Colorado for anybody on the phone. I was on the phone with a contractor, a manufacturer, yesterday, and they build trusses for wood trusses. They're a manufacturing firm that build trusses for, of course, residential, but also light commercial. And they immediately looked at the Colorado order and immediately to the owner of the company said, "Fuck, we're an essential service. We're not stopping anything." And so that, on one hand, that's the approach he took, and then he laid everybody off except for he and his family. And so on one hand, I definitely disagree with his action that everything he's doing is essential. On the other hand, as a businessman, I actually think that the layoff made sense until we had the stimulus package. And now I think he should rehire his factory workers and some of his other workers and take advantage of the tax credit. So this is a constantly moving target. And that's part of why we need to do this on a weekly basis. It's going to change every single day. I've been on top of this for the last 2 weeks, and it's changing hourly. And that's why we need to be talking to each other. So anyway, I want to keep talking to all of you. What about the rest of you? Hi, Joe, how's Boston? As soon as I said that, he hung up.
Oh, help me out. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. How you doing, man?
Good. Yourself?
Good. How's Boston?
It's good. It's about the same as everybody else. A lot of confusion right now.
Yeah. I think that's a good comment. I like that, because when I was talking to the CEO from Michigan yesterday, there is confusion. Somebody needs to mute their mic, please. There is confusion, but we're going to make sure about what we're not confused about, right? And so there is no, on the epidemiology side, for example, there is no confusion. From the science standpoint, we know what needs to happen and what will happen if we don't take certain measures. The business side, there's lots of confusion. On the interpretation, I think probably the biggest confusion is from these various shelter in place or stay at home orders from all these different entities. There's probably the biggest confusion there in defining what's essential services. And that's kind of why I tried to make that more clear today. Is there's no lack of clarity. You know whether what you're doing is essential or not. Everybody in this call does that. The real issue is explaining that to the customer and explaining that to your guys, right? So in Indiana, there's not a single construction project I couldn't be on. You know, and so I don't have a problem with the customer. What I have a problem, well, I do, but I don't have a problem sending my guys out to work under the rule. I do have a problem sending the guys out to work though, and I'm not going to do it.
I don't know if you've been following Boston, but there's been a bit pretty good debate between the mayor of Boston and the governor of Massachusetts.
Yeah.
But the city of Boston has shut down all construction sites.
Yeah.
Massachusetts is playing that essential role and so on. So there's still a lot of construction going on, even with the city being shut down. There's still quite a few people on the sites.
Yeah, well, you know, it's a good comment. On that call I was on last Monday with a YPO organization, right? YPO is Young Presidents Organization, right? So I was on a call with a YPO organization last week, and it was shocking to me. You know, there's 30-some people on the call. It was shocking to me that where 28 of the 30 were at was they were doing. The only thing they were thinking about, and the only thing they were talking about, is the immediate things that all of us have done, right? And so the precautions, send people home, set 6 feet, all those kind of things. But they hadn't moved beyond that. What they hadn't moved beyond to is, okay, thinking about the real longevity of your business versus the short term. What if I send somebody out to work on a project and he or she gets COVID-19 and dies? Well, you're going to get a lawsuit. Right. And of course, that's the best thing that happens. The worst thing that happens is the person dies, but you're going to get a lawsuit that could, in fact, take your business down. And so we have to be more strategic in how we think through all of these issues. And they're not easy issues. And that's why when I talked to John about this, is that I don't have all the answers. I got a bunch of questions. I do have a bunch of answers, but we need to talk about all this stuff. But if we aren't putting the terms of, are we sending our people out to get sick and or to die, or let's say they get sick and take it home to their wife or their father or whatever. No, we got to think about that stuff. Yeah, so it was interesting to me last Monday. So now we're a week and a half away, how most of the presidents and CEOs on that call just really weren't thinking about those kinds of things, but they were in a survival mode. And that's the class, survive and thrive. Is like, okay, do we have our shit together from a survival standpoint? Once we get that, now we're going to move forward to, okay, how do we thrive? So what about the rest of y'all?
Can you put the email address back up? There was one person in the chat who said that they had tried sending something and had it bounce back.
Yeah, I second that. I actually just tried to do that. Not that I was multitasking, but it did get kicked back.
All right, so it is. I will go and check it after this call to make sure that it's. I used it. I initiated it yesterday and used it yesterday, but I will check it again. I will. I don't want to do this. I'll check it and make sure that it's live, because I have no doubt that that address is nobody else has that address. So check and verify it. So it is kirk.survivethrive@gmail.com. Yeah, appreciate you letting me know. But as soon as we get off this, I'll make sure it's live again.
I could have them CC the foundation general account.
Yeah, you want to do that? Let's do that. Okay.
I'll put that in the chat, everybody.
Thanks. How's everybody else doing? Is everybody else prepared personally? You got plenty of food and you're taking care of your family and all that kind of stuff? You got your shit together? If you're a plumbing contractor on this call, are you selling and installing days? And I'm not joking. They're flying off the shelves at Amazon. There's markup there. There's work there. Now, the question you have to ask yourself is about having contact in people's homes, but I'm serious, right? It's about it's even the little things, right? And they're flying off the shelves.
Chad with Hal here. Morals and ethics on that one again. We kind of slowed down on that right out the gate, like UV lights for HVAC systems. And so, but now that things are kind of winding down, yeah, definitely starting to look at different scenarios.
Yeah, good. What about the rest of you? What are y'all worried about?
Hey, Kirk, this is Dave Boda in Charlotte.
Hi, Dave. How you doing?
Good, yourself?
I'm good, man. You guys don't have a problem. It's all forces all moving forward, right?
Well, yeah, Mecklenburg County issued a stay at home, but all of our GCs and our two big uptown projects are charging ahead.
Yeah.
So that's my worry right now, because you really got me thinking about doing the right thing.
Yeah.
I've been telling my guys for a month, if they do shut us down, I would be willing to pay them for a month and maybe longer, but we're in a good cash position to be able to do that and not have to take federal money. But
yeah,
that's my big worry right now is how do I satisfy my contracts? And I'm looking through, and I don't see any force majeure language, so I need to go through that that link that you sent.
Yeah, and then look for it under terms like act of God and those kind of things. There's a lot of contracts like the AIA contract. I don't think uses the phrase exactly force majeure, but look for that. And then the other thing is that we'll talk about when we talk about insurance in this is that, well, one, you should send that notification, because that will put your GC on notice certainly about delays and those kinds of things. It also put them on notice that you are paying attention to this and you're not just being commanded by them. The other thing that I will have make part of the class too is you should reach out to your insurance carrier and you should ask them the question, what if one of my people contracts COVID-19 and gets sick or dies, or someone who they've been in contact with gets sick or dies? What is my position relative to workman's comp? And have you, the insurance carrier, have you addressed that with a standard letter that I can share with my customer about insurance coverage on this? And so an action item I would to give in response to that is reach out to your insurance carrier right away. Now they're also in flux right now figuring this out. But I promise you, since insurance carriers are big businesses, they're out ahead of us as a contracting entity. And I've already seen insurance policies for this and starting to see letters like I've talked about. So I would reach out to the insurance carrier right away. Then whatever you get from your carrier, you need to put it under your cover and send a letter to your contractor. If you decide to take the position that, hey, I don't believe either this project or phase one or whatever we're doing of this project falls under essential services, I understand that can be that you're interpreting that way. But I hereby officially contest that determination.
In reality, it's everybody's essential. The jobs are essential to their bottom line. It's the position they're taking.
That's exactly right, and that is the moral choice. On the example I showed you in San Francisco a little earlier on this call is all of the subcontractors are back to work because they've been bullied back to work. And if you think about the moral issue there of hundreds of people on a job where they're building condominiums that don't sell for any less than $3 million. I'm looking around the screen here, and I know where many of you are in your spiritual life and things like that. And it's like none of you could convince me that that's morally defensible. Not a single one of you. And I think all of you probably would agree with me on that. That's not essential. Do people want to work? Do the guys want to work? Hell yeah, because they're terrified about losing their house or their car or whatever. I get that, but nobody's going to be in any good shape if we're all dead. So it's a tough question, but I think for me the answer is easy. Do the right thing. Always do the right thing. It was that football coach who coached at Notre Dame and then coached at South Carolina, and y'all know who I'm talking about. And he had a great video I used to show all the time in my company called Do Right. That was Lou Holtz. Do right. And everybody on this frickin' call knows what that means. So that's all I got to do.
And if I can afford to pay the staff, to me, that's the right thing to do as well.
I agree.
To keep them, secure.
Oh, I agree. I mean, that's why in the company I was talking to before, they cut their salaries to 60%. And this is the executive team and the project manager and all that is how can we keep people having some revenue coming in? And that's you relooking at all of your projects and all of your contracts. And that's when I talked about relooking at your business as a startup, is that how can we keep as many of our people working using the whole quiver of arrows that we have between both dramatically relooking at how we manage our overhead, paying people for a couple of days a week instead of the whole week, getting some of that federal tax credit, albeit that's not going to go very far. It's only go $10,000, but it's still $10,000. we got to put that whole quiver of solutions together. And I'm with you, is that we're going to try to keep as many people going as possible. But there are businesses that are going to go out of business. And so a comment on that is it a moral and ethical decision to say, for example, if you're a small contractor, you're $1 million contractor, maybe the right thing to do is shut it down. And as hard as that is, and shut it down. Now, if you're on this call and you're an owner, you can survive that. But maybe the thing to do is, in fact, to shut it down instead of doing the wrong thing. And then then hunker down and create your plan to emerge as a version 2.0 or 3.0 when this is passed. And that could be a legitimate strategy. I'm not suggesting that you should take that strategy, but it certainly could be. Yeah. So lots of things I think and talk about, guys. What about the rest of y'all? I think we should all drink more. I made sure that when I went to the store and they didn't have any toilet paper, they did have plenty of booze. And so my house is 3 levels. I'm working at home, and so I've got the upstairs bourbon, the main floor bourbon, and the downstairs bourbon, and we have backups. So,
Hey, Kirk.
Yeah.
This is Dan from Boston. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. So I have a question for you as far as what should we be telling our guys that we are letting go and try to maintain and giving them that confidence that we are going to call them back.
Yeah, so that's part of what we'll do, and then we'll do that in the first week of the classes. I've got some letters that we've written and some letters that other companies have written about how to, because a big part of this communication, right? And that's really a big part of the first phase is how do we communicate with our employees exactly what we're doing, how we are helping them, how we are going to continue to try to help them, and how we have a long-term personal investment in them. And we're not just going to throw them aside, even if we literally can't pay them. And so that's really a big part of the first week is how do we communicate with our employees, and so they know that we're not just throwing them with the wolves. So I have answers on that, and of course, by having that conversation, other people have what they're doing as well. But we'll start with I've got 2 or 3 different memos from different companies on how to approach them, how to message them.
This is Marty in Arizona. In your links and such that you're going to send out to us, do you have information about how people are going to get a hold of these benefits that are coming from the stimulus package? If we're to help our people get it, we need to know.
Yeah, for sure. And that's absolutely, that's a part of the class is that they're not in today's link. I give you a basic link there, but we will go into detail, of course, because this is going to play out, right? So I don't think the president has signed it yet, but it's going to be signed today. And so I will help everyone learn how to access that money. I already know how to access the unemployment. And so there are some links in there now for that. And so the short answer is yes. And of course, since we have so many high-powered, smart people who are doing things every day, we'll all share all of our resources there. But I absolutely will be taking people to the money for sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, you bet. The rest of y'all think.
And actually, Vern Harnish has been sending out some stuff too, some links and stuff like that about following some webinars and stuff about how to access some of that money as well. So
yeah, so my comment to you is fuck you, Tyler. He's a competitor of mine. So fuck you.
Is he really?
No. Yeah. So I'm teasing, but hey, I'm not plugging for AGC here. No, I'm kidding about that. We should all take all of the information that's out there that can help any of us. And so, but Vern's probably selling his shit. So I'm joking.
And actually, well, you actually introduced me to his stuff. So
I know, because that's just who I am, Tyler. But telling other people that.
And actually, as we're sitting here on this call, AMP Manufacturing, American Midwest Power, they have shut down manufacturing starting tomorrow at 5:00.
Well, AMP was the wholesaler that I referenced in the San Francisco job. So AMP's been all over this. AMP is morally doing the right thing. I'm 100%. And you know what's going to happen when we come out of this? I believe as a human being, as I think as a good guy, what's going to happen is good guys win. And AMP's doing the right thing right now. I'm sure that's going to pay off for them in the long run. Yeah. So AMP was the distributor I was talking about.
Hey, Kirk, this is Dustin.
Hi, Dustin. How you doing?
Pretty good. We got a couple hospital projects that have suspended some work on the interior of the hospital.
Good.
Working on a emergency department renovation, so they've left that portion over.
Yep.
But working directly with the hospital, they have repurposed some of our task force for putting in some additional inline exhaust fans and combining some duct systems to make entire towers go negative. What's I mean, outside of the guys that are on those job sites, I mean, they're going to have to be on the floors with patients that are already in some of those rooms. We've gone through with our safety director. You know, he's put out training seminars. We've issued PPE. Any additional advice to give those guys that are in there working?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. And by the way, your hospital is doing exactly the right thing. And that's also where the work is. And everybody on this call who's a contractor, if you aren't going to your hospital corps and saying, what can we do to help? Then I don't think you're doing the right thing. A couple things specific to your question, Dustin. One, you need to talk to your insurance carrier immediately to ask about additional coverages for these guys. And for these guys and for the company. And then two, I think this is a wartime status thing. And so I don't think any of us should have anybody working in those situations unless you have formally asked for volunteers and only allow people who are volunteers. And it's hard with employees, right? Because we all know employees might volunteer because they want the work, just like guys like working overtime. But nobody really likes work overtime. What you like is, the time. I think you really need to, before you send anybody to those jobs or anybody you have on the job, you need to have a face-to-face with them or a virtual face-to-face at least with them and say, look, do you have kids? Do you have anybody in your family that is in any of those at-risk classes? Do you have close contact with anybody that's pregnant? Do you have close contact with elderly and things like that? And I think you let them make the call from being a volunteer, but then you make the call because there's some situations where, in spite of the fact that it may be, and they articulate too, that may be an economic challenge for them to do it, you have the right to make the call and say, sorry, Tony, I'm not going to let you go out there. And I think that's you being the officer in charge and making the right call. Does it make sense?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Doesn't that sort of thing open you up to discrimination lawsuits if you're picking and choosing who has volunteered, who you're going to allow to work in a certain location?
Marty, I don't think so, especially like in Arizona is a right to work state and Indiana's a right to work state. And right to work state, you have no lawsuit risk there at all for that. And also, this is a really good question, Marty, because I've had some questions from other people a couple of nights ago about contracts and about getting sued if you refuse to go out there. And my response to that is, there are things I'm going to do in my business that, okay, sue me. I'm good with that. I'm going to come out. I may lose, but I doubt it. But I promise you that both the federal government and the states and the courts are going to look very unfavorably on those kinds of lawsuits, and I'm willing to take that risk. So, but that's the long answer. The short answer, in a right to work state, you have no risk. You can put anybody to work anywhere you at any time for any reason. Yeah. So, and of course, especially if I communicated and message to my people this, and I would. And so if I was Dustin, I would put out a memo or an email to all of my people. Actually, it'd be a memo to all of my people about this policy is the only people who are going to let work in a critical environment like this, a high risk area, is first volunteers, and then two, we will make, as the company, will make the ultimate decision relative to risk. Respectfully, we respect your opinion, but at the end of the day, we're sending the people into battle on the battlefield, and we have the right to make that call. You'd win that lawsuit, I guarantee you. I'd be willing to. I would have no problem defending that. Good, great questions. This is exactly what's going to happen during this this class when we go through it, because all of you now will be seeing some of the things that I showed on the screen while we're doing this. Is okay. Here's the email I got. Here's the response. Here's the contract. Blah blah blah. And that's what we're gonna we're gonna work through all of those kinds of things. So in real time, we're going to act as colleagues, which is the whole point of an association, right? We're going to act as colleagues, helping all of us to fight the fight and be successful. It's funny, I'm looking at the screen. It's fun when you do webinars because I do a lot of online, and everybody has a different way of looking at the screen, and I know I do. And often we're tilted down because we're looking at the screen. So it's fun watching people I've known for a long time and watch them have a lot less hair than they used to have. And so some of you qualify. And I don't know what Self's laughing about. He's got plenty of hair. It's just white. But so is mine. That just means we've gained more wisdom. White hair equals wisdom.
Hey, this is Terry. Good hearing from you. Good seeing you again, long lost friend. Man, you always challenge me every time we have discussions, and your challenge today about putting our employees at risk kind of hit me between the eyes. The thing that keeps me up at night is not having work for our men, and the last thing I want to do is put them in harm's way. But just at sometimes to me, the job site seems more of a safe haven than going to the convenience store. So I'm not challenging your position, but I've just not, until this call today, I haven't once felt like I was putting our people at risk.
Yeah, no, Terry, it's really good to see you. And you're still more skinny and fit than I am. And that pisses me off. But anyway, now, you know what, you really at the heart of, for me as a guy, what's the easiest thing for me, and what's the easiest thing for me to do for the last 46 years? Go to work. I'm good at it. I feel comfortable there. It is my safe zone. I know what I'm doing. I'm in control, but that's not necessarily the wise thing to do. Yeah. And I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they say, hey, as long as we practice social distancing, we're good. I just call bullshit on that. Because you look at a construction site, you can imagine, well, here's a worker over here and here's one over there, and they are 6 feet apart. Bullshit. We handle the same materials. We handle the same door in the porta-john. We handle the same gang boxes. We handle the same plans. No, come on. We all know better. And I'm with you, because to me, this is why I said at the beginning of the call, none of us have ever had to make this decision before. You're a successful businessman, owner of a company, and you've made good economic decisions, and Danny did before you, and you made good economic decisions based on what's best for the business and the guys. And we're good at that. This is not the same thing. None of us have ever had to do this before. The health and life and death. I think that piece that I showed about OSHA is compelling. Is the health of our employees versus them losing their freaking house. That's not a good decision. But I know you, Terry. You know what the right decision is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know there's all different segments in our country. Right now in our little county, there's I think 25 cases. So, but it's coming, and I understand that it's nothing like it is in other parts of the country. But
yeah,
very challenging thought. So.
Yeah, and you got Bill Lee as a governor who has said, and I know Bill. Bill, I would consider him a friend, and Bill has said loud and clear he's not going to issue that order. It's not going to happen. It's not going to come from Bill Lee. And frankly, I know Bill. I like Bill. Bill's wrong. Bill's wrong. So he's he's listening to the political persuasion of the economics, and y'all know that I'm an unrepentant capitalist, and so it's not about that. But when people say we're going to have more deaths and more pain from the economy than the health crisis, that's rationalization, and it's just not true. We will have both. It's what decision are we willing to make? And we all know better. We do. So.
Man, it's good catching visit some more. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Terry. It's great seeing you.
Good seeing you, buddy.
Well, I see Texas, Arizona, Michigan. I see all kinds of people out here. That's good. It means we got a good penetration.
You need a virtual hug button, Kirk.
You know what? I'm sure one of those exists. We really do need that, and we all need to be doing that. But it's funny. I've stopped kissing my wife, not because I want to, and she doesn't quite understand. But I'm on the road 40 weeks a year, and the last time I was on the road was 2 weeks ago today, doing a 2-day seminar for someone, and I'll be honest with you, and I'm sure I'm fine. But last night I was a little bit warm, and it worried the hell out of me. And so who knows? We don't know. None of us know. And so I'm sure I'm fine. But either that or I could be dead in a week. That's not doom and gloom. It's just this is the world. This is where we're at. Do you all agree with that?
Unfortunately, yes.
That's where we're at. I don't know. So I stopped kissing my wife, and now, of course, I stopped kissing her after 14 days. But so it's more than likely I've already spread some. John, she said she told me after I did that this morning. She said she's going to come to your house and sleep on your futon now, since you've been self-isolating since you were out of town. So.
I gave up on the futon. It was hurting my back too much. I'm 10 days away from my last potential exposure.
Yeah. So
what are you going to do?
What are you going to do? Right. Well, what we're going to do is we're all going to try. We're all going to. I would say try. I hate the word try. We're not going to try anything. We're all going to do the right thing every single day, every single moment, and we're all going to suffer economically. And if the worst thing happens, we go out of business. Every one of us is blessed to be an American, and every one of us as a business person on this call can start again when it's over. We can't say that about our employees if we haven't given them that chance to get to that day. So I could start a business tomorrow. Terry could start a business tomorrow. Everybody on this call could do that tomorrow. So whether tomorrow is 6 months from now or 2 years from now, we could all do it, and we all know it. But meanwhile, let's figure out how to thrive and knock it dead. And well, that's a bad phrase, isn't it? Just like I had to stop using quid pro quo. Now I can't say we can knock them dead anymore. So I'm losing all kinds of words in my language. But that's okay. Get out there and help the hospitals figure out how to reconfigure their buildings and help people solve their problems that are critical. There's plenty of those to go around, and stop doing the other shit that don't need to be doing. And then deal with all the legal pieces and the employee pieces and the insurance pieces and the cash flow and all that, and just business. We got a lot of work to do. So let's do it. So any of you are going to join me in this class?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Good.
Thank you again.
You're welcome. Let's figure out how to save the world, right? This time it's real. All right. Well, unless anybody's got any other questions, why don't we sign off, and then you'll get the email and the notification of which day and what time, and then we'll go from there. But I look forward to hearing what you learn. And also for everybody, I should have said this when everybody's on. Everybody who knows me knows that at any point and any time, if you text me, we will be talking either via text or what have you. And so don't let a week pass. If there's a question that comes up, or a problem, or a crisis, or an idea, or a solution, text me. Just text me. Everybody's got my phone number. Just text me, and then I'll find a way. John and I'll find a way to share it with people. And this is not we really can't wait a week, but we can't do it daily either. So, but this is a moving target every minute. So let's call on our collaboration skills. We're all now millennials, which is cool. We're a bunch of old frickin' millennials. All right. Anything else, folks?
I got one more question just on the way interest rates are going at the Fed and how that might affect owners and developers.
Yeah. So
What do you see that doing?
yeah. So I sit on the board of a bank, and so we're really, really close to that. We're horrified that the Fed already went to zero because it gives the Fed nowhere to go. There are 3 countries that over the last year and a half have tried going to negative interest rates, and it's been an abysmal failure. And certainly there's some discussion at the Fed that they could do that. I don't think that's going to happen. And now we have nowhere to go with rates. And so what the Fed is doing is infusing capital, and that means they're printing money, which only leads eventually to inflation and hyperinflation. So I don't see the rates going down. We all know what happens in times of uncertainty. In times of uncertainty, speculative builders don't build, and they're not going to. So what we really need to focus is on critical infrastructure, real critical infrastructure, hospitals, utilities, road repair, which doesn't affect many people on this call, but defense. And so it's going to be tapping into those kinds of things. And so I don't think the Fed's going to go lower than zero. If they do, at the bank, we don't believe it will work. And I don't think it's really going to stimulate anybody into do. It's not anybody that is doing anything speculative is going to wait. I think you'd be foolish to not do that. And so how do we get out of recession/depression? We have to grow the economy. And so what's that look like? It's look like public works and specialty sectors. For I talk about Maslow a lot, right? From Maslow's pyramid, food, shelter, health. And so we should be focusing on those areas.
What do you, since I've never been through something like this, what do you see it doing to owners with existing loans on existing projects?
Yeah, so what they're doing right now what they're doing is they're trying to refinance, right? And so at the utility company, we've got $50 million worth of debt. And I promise you this week we were reaching out and attempting to refinance that debt. And we got really low interest loans. We got a 1.75. And at a 1.75, we're trying to renegotiate. And so we'll talk about that when we talk about the finance side of it. That's when I talked about you should talk to your customers and your lenders. Is you should be going right now and trying to renegotiate the rate on your line of credit with your customer. With your bank, and then and your customers. We should expect customers to be doing the same thing, but recognize that goes both ways. So yeah, good business 101 is renegotiate for a better rate. The owners of buildings will do that too, but they're going to be as concerned as everybody else is about duration, delay claims, other interruptions. When the second spike happens towards the end of the year, what's that do to their project? What does that do to their revenues? And so we know for sure uncertainty dampens growth in the GDP. So all of those things will be happening for sure.
And I hate to keep dragging it on, but do you see this long term affecting the office lease industry and
for sure.
Everybody's learning how to work virtually so much now?
Oh, no. This is a really important comment. One of the things we're going to learn is our models are going to change dramatically. So I'll use schools that will come to office lease in a second. I'll use schools as an example. Is that schools literally now are sending, in most states, are sending students home for the year, the school year, and that clearly may go into fall. And so what the whole education industry, I'm talking public industry here, is going to have a crash course in learning how to do virtual education better than they're doing it right now. And so that probably will lead, the logical conclusion of that is going to lead to less school construction over time of physical buildings, but maybe, for example, more data centers to handle the bandwidth that's required to do this. And so there's going to be downs and ups. On office buildings, the same kind of thing. Your comments right on target is we know that working from home is not as effective as working in the workplace, but we're all going to learn how to do it better. We're all going to learn how to use these platforms we have better, and as a result, that should call for less construction in the commercial office sector. Those are just and those are really great conversations for the class, because that's about retooling your strategy. I'm not saying we're not going to be building commercial office buildings in the future, but your question really was, are we going to build less of them? And the answer's hell yes, a lot in the immediate downturn, but then even emerging out of it, we probably will have new models. Yeah, and so how do we craft a successful strategy for that? And how do we find the money in the new play? So yeah, so I'm optimistic about that.
Very good. Thank you.
You bet. Anybody else? Well, y'all are
Thanks again for doing this. This is really good, and I just wish everybody the best on the call. Stay as safe as you can if you're part of a group that has to report. And be safe, and be talking to you hopefully Thursday or Wednesday, whenever you do it.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I appreciate that. All right. Anybody else got anything to say? Good news, it's 4:25 on the Eastern time, so we're only 35 minutes away from the official drinking lamp being lit. So,
Hey, this is Terry. I gotta ask, did you climb all the highest mountains in every state? Did you get that accomplished?
we didn't get them all done yet. I'm going to say yet, and so that is still a plan for me and some of my family. My wife has decided, my wonderful wife has decided to opt out because we were climbing one, and my wife is my life partner, and she's a brave soul. And I'd never seen fear in her eye before, ever, until this one moment. And that was the moment it was done. And she said to me, she says, I'm good. And I respect that. And so now one of my other sons and I have done a couple of others since then. And then for Christmas this year, we gave all of our kids the book that we use as a source for this. And so I still intend on finishing them. I hope. Denali is going to be tough with every day that passes. And I certainly hope my kids and then grandkids continue it too. So yeah, but that's a big part of our life.
That's a great story. Man, thanks again.
Thanks, Terry.
All right, Kurt, thank you.
See ya. Anybody else out there? You got anything you want to talk about? All right, well, if not, and then I'll just ask everybody to sign off, and then I'll see you when we do the class, whichever, either Wednesday or Thursday. And I am really happy that you came on. And then if John and Cindy will stay on for a second, that'd be awesome. And then John and Cindy, I can close it out, and we'll see you all next week. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. And then there were 5.
People who have wandered off.
I can exit people too, so I'll do that. All right. The funny thing is, on WebEx, when you exit people, you expel them. So that seems pretty radical. But I'll do that, because sometimes what happens, of course, people walk away from their computer and they're still on. So no worries. I'll get it down to the 3 of us.
Then can you end the recording without the webinar ending?
All right, so I've now stopped